Zoning and density. How do zoning and density affect affordability? We think we have the answer. This is Jay Knight, and this is Build, Baby, Build. All right. Well, we're here back in the studio on Build, Baby, Build, and I want to thank you guys for coming in. Today, what we want to do is talk about home affordability because of zoning. And what I run into as a developer and home builder is I get a lot of resistance to attached housing, which is where that, and resistance from the municipality. They don't necessarily always want townhomes, but because of development cost and land cost, we have a very difficult time offering what we would consider an affordable home that is not attached in the municipalities that we work in. So what all the municipalities have different motivation for why they zone property the way they zone. They have concerns about growth and schools and traffic and those kind of things. But we want to make sure that there's also a concern for their employees. And so each of these municipalities employs teachers and police officers and firemen and indirectly nurses. And what we want to talk about today is how do these standards and requirements that the municipalities set affect these critical people that we need in our communities. With us today are Lance Alexander with North Star Mortgage. Lance is a friend of the show and our mortgage expert. Thank you for being here, Lance.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And also John Knight. John's the president and partner in Chisel Mill Homes. And so with these guys, we're going to talk about what kind of house can we offer that's not a townhome, and we'll just workshop that and just see what we come up with. Lance, before we get started, would you introduce yourself, and then John will ask the same.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lance Alexander with North Star Mortgage Advisors. We've been in the Atlanta housing market for the last 25 years or so, growing with Knight Homes and growing with a lot of new construction for the last 20 years. It's been our bread and butter. So appreciate you having me on the show.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm John Knight. I'm a friend of the pod as well, son of the pod. I am the president of Chisel Mill Homes. We do about 50 homes a year right now. I like to piggyback off my dad and tell people I have 50 years of home experience, but it's more like 8. We do a lot of first-time home buyer homes, so unfortunately right now that's gotten to about like $350,000 homes, but when I was first starting, just in my short time here, I like to tell people I sold the last home in Coweta County for a new home for under $200,000. And so that's grown exponentially just in the last, I think that was 5 years ago. So.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. So let's just dive into it. If we want to talk about, if we want to say that the municipality doesn't want townhomes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the smallest lot I can develop as a developer and do detached, where you can have a fenced yard, single family home, maybe white picket fence out front, the dream starter home. We could probably get about 6 homes on an acre if the municipality allowed it. And that's probably where we're going to wind up is it's very difficult to find any municipality that would allow something like that. But if we could do 6 units per acre, and we think we could get our lot cost down to around 75 in the Southeast, probably around $75,000 a lot. That's if all the stars align, but let's go best case scenario, $75,000. So we start with the given in each of these scenarios we're going to talk about is the lot price is $75,000. John, what is the square footage, sticks and bricks to build a home?
We're probably doing about $100 a square foot, right?
$100 a square foot. All right. So why don't we start with police officers? I think we all need police officers, and all communities are healthier because of our wonderful police officers. Do you guys? I think we looked it up. What's the average police officer earn?
I looked up, and in Georgia, because we sell to a lot of policemen. We have a average salary of 61,700.
Average salary is 61,700. Okay. And Lance,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think that person can purchase?
Yeah, so I did some numbers on that. It's about $51.40 a month in income. So that's kind of how we base our calculations: is what is their monthly income? Then we can figure out what their max mortgage payment should be per month. So at $5,100 a month, $51.40, comfortably, I'm going to run them up to about 35% debt ratio. That's still pushing it because you got to assume some debt too, right? They probably have a car loan. They probably want to drive places and have some expenses. But that's only a payment of about $1,800 a month, which translates to a purchase price with today's interest rates of around $225 to $230 sales price.
225 to 230.
Yeah, depending on where they buy and what the taxes are and the insurance on that house.
Okay. So let's say 230, and we subtract, there's a 30% gross margin. Let's say it's 25% gross margin. So can we do the math on that? What's
Yep.
what's 75% of 230?
172.5.
So 172.5. We subtract from that number $75,000, which I think leaves 97.5.
So they can have 975 square foot.
975 square foot house. You know what?
And that's often not even allowed. Most of the municipalities we build in, at the best, have a minimum square footage of 1,000. In Meriwether, we do a lot of work in Meriwether. There's a minimum of 1,375. And so the lowest detached home we offer right now is $299, and we're only doing that to get people in the door. So
Right.
it really should be in the 300s. But the lowest we've offered in a while has been $299 for a detached home.
You would have to build that home in Meriwether for $71 a square foot.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, like Boston.
No, the $100 a square foot we have pretty tight. We have a great department, and I think we might have gotten some of the attached stuff that we've done recently to $90 a square foot, and we've done some attached stuff that we've sold for $275. But yeah, best case is $90 a square foot.
Okay. So if the municipality wanted their police officers to be able to buy a home with a fenced yard, that type thing, we could do it, but it would need to be 975 square feet. Now, you guys won't relate to this, but I remember vividly, my dad and I was living with my father, and we lived in Point South, an area not too far from here. And our home was 900 square feet, and it was 3-bedroom, had a kitchen and a laundry. And ideally, we would have had a bigger house. But praise the Lord, the government didn't make that impossible. And my father, although he would have liked to have bought a larger home, I'm sure, he was able to buy a home. And it was a detached home. It was right at 900 square feet. I had a bath and a half, and I survived it, and it's somebody else's first home. And so although when I first look at that 975 square foot number, I'm thinking, wow, that's impossible. No, but it's not. It's not. And if the market dictated, now granted, what I think that we'll hear is that but most young people that buy homes have 2 incomes, whatever. Well, when my father bought his first home, he was a blue collar worker, and he was 26 years old. My mother was 21. And she stayed at home, and all the moms on the street stayed at home. The dads went to work, and it only required 1 income to own a home and feed your family. And so that may not be the choice that all American households would like to make, but it certainly should be a choice they have. And in this environment, we don't have a choice to build a home that a police officer can purchase. Well, what do we want to talk about next? Nurses? Can we talk about nurse?
Yeah, a policeman and a fireman are pretty comparable. They're like $100 apart. So a nurse, they make 72,373.
72 what?
1,373.
Okay. What do we think?
So that's about 10 grand, 11 grand more a month in income. That does allow them to push their payment up to about 2,100 a month, maybe a little higher. Well, you got to think about nurses are going to have student loan debt, right?
Right.
They're going to have more expenses typically than a firefighter or a police officer. So you just got to be cautious not to over push them because they're going to have to start paying their student loans, right? But that comes out to a payment around 2,200 a month max. You're probably looking at a max price of around 275. Again, depending on taxes and insurance where the home's located, but you're on the higher end of the 200s now for a nurse.
Okay, if we use the same formula, we start with we want a 25% gross margin on that, and 275. What does that leave us?
Let's do that. 131, 250.
131,
I'm sorry, that leaves you with 206, 250, and then you take off the $75,000 lot cost.
206, 250
Mm-hmm.
minus the lot, and you said that leaves what?
131, 250.
131, 250. So now we're looking at a 1,300 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
So for a nurse, we can do a 1,312 square foot house. And
that's pretty similar to what I mentioned that we've done in Merriweather, where they have the 1,375 minimum, and that's what I mentioned that we're selling them for $299 to kind of get them in the door. But it's exactly what's showing up in real life.
so, but when you reference Meriwether County, it's a great place, and we love it, but it's not inside the Atlanta metropolitan MSA, metropolitan area. And so when I was doing sales a number of years ago, 30 years ago, there was an old saying, they'll drive till they buy. And it was just people would continue driving from their employment center or their school or whatever was important to them. They kept driving away until they reached an area they could afford. And so in this case, the nurses there is product available. Well, not really, because we're 1,350 and we're saying they can only qualify for 1,300 square feet, but it's close. So there's product available, homes available, but they're 60 miles outside of the city. And they'll pass through 4 counties on the way to the city where them buying a home would be impossible, I believe. Because I know that if we're looking at a sales price of 275, we're about to open a townhome community. It's going to be very difficult to hold it under 400,000. I'm trying to think of where anything. You just are building some townhomes in Rex. What's the price there?
Right now they're listed at 315.
So 315, and this is an area that would be. I grew up not far from there actually. It's in North Clayton County, which is near the city of Atlanta. But it's a good place to live. But historically, it's been where we get starter homes, and even a starter home price is over $300,000. So a nurse couldn't buy there on her own. Okay, so that's a nurse. What about a firefighter, John? They're
It's
roughly the same as the
police. It doesn't make too much sense. But yeah, they were about 61,825.
Okay. And then what about teachers? Because every municipality has a lot of teachers.
We have 52,911.
52,911. All right. What we think, Lance, on what they can afford?
Yeah, that's a monthly income of around $4,400 a month. Really, again, teachers are going to have student loans, kind of like the nurses will, right? Usually not as much, but they will have some student loans. That's a max payment of around $1,540. Maybe you could push the limit to $1,600 if they don't have much in debt. but that's going to put you around 200, 210 max sales price.
So let's say 210. And we do,
That brings you to 150, and then 75,000 off that for the lot. You're at 75,000.
75,000. So that home could be 750 square feet.
Right.
At first, when I look at that, I think it's laughable. But I will say we can do it. I believe as a developer and a home builder, we can build what people can afford. Henry Ford, when he started the assembly line, his goal, he was probably the biggest employer in the United States. His goal was to ensure they were so efficient that everyone who worked on that assembly line assembling that car could afford to buy that
Could
car.
buy the car. I've heard that, yeah.
And so what I think it should be important to us that our civil servants have an opportunity to live in the communities in which they serve. Lance, what do you see? So you see all the professions buying homes. Does anything come to mind in your experience, your conversations, talking to people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a lot more, a lot less first-time home buyers, and a lot more move-up buyers, and a lot more baby boomers retiring. That's really the main buying pool is second-time purchasers and baby boomers who are selling and they're downsizing, right? A lot more of that than you're seeing first-time home buyers. And when you do see a first-time home buyer, you're typically seeing a husband and wife buying a home together, and they're just doing whatever they can to afford whatever home possible, right, near their job. And I mean, a constant struggle we're dealing with is home affordability. Every community, right? Every price point. It hasn't really affected one more than the other, but home affordability has affected everybody, without a doubt.
Do you think that people are so discouraged that they've even stopped calling you?
Oh yeah, there's definitely families that have stopped. Yeah, for sure. In fact, in the millennial category and in the young category, we're seeing a lot of them are just going to permanent renters for now, right? They're actually, instead of buying a home, they're taking their excess money and they're doing trips and they're going on the Airbnbs and they're enjoying their life. They're like, well, I can't afford a home, may as well go do something fun. So we're definitely seeing that. And if those kids do end up buying a home, we typically see mom and dad co-signing with them, right? Somebody joining with.
How much is the typical down payment? What percentage of the purchase price?
Yeah, for a first-time buyer, I mean, you can go as low as 3% on a conventional loan. You can do 3.5% FHA. Obviously, VA is 100%. And there are some down payment assistance programs, but what's funny is these DPA programs that help people buy first-time homes haven't increased with inflation, right? So as these programs have like income limits, right? You can only make this much money and you can buy this home. Well, it limits you artificially to buying about a $250,000 house. Well, if you can't find a $250,000 house, what's the point?
Right.
So they need to scale with inflation, and they run out of money fast, right? Because everybody wants the down payment assistance right now.
Sure.
And the municipalities fund that with taxes, right? And they run out of money, right? It happens. So, yeah.
So John, you're negotiating contracts all the time with buyers. What are you seeing? And what's your wife lists the homes, your brother-in-law sells your houses. What are the conversations you're having with people on affordability?
Yeah, one thing we're seeing now is a lot of nitpicking at items that they might not have previously. What's the HOA cost here? I think we've seen a lot of taxes that have blown sales recently because they'll be like, "Oh, that puts us over our limit," you know. So every penny counting. Almost every deal, we're giving a lot of concessions to help get them in the door, help them with down payment. Sometimes we work with them and we work with Lance's company and see, well, if we raise the price this much, can we give this much more down? So we just us and Lance's company and other lenders, everyone's having to be really creative right now to get people in the door. But it's always about the affordability of the home right now. A lot of people loving the homes and a lot of people not able to get in the home. So
Yeah. Okay. I tell you what birthed the podcast is that the affordability, and we start as a developer and home builder, we're looking at all our cost. And then what becomes the glaring elephant in the room is some of our costs are unnecessary and I mean, a lot of it is municipal requirements. So municipalities will stipulate square footages, and a square footage, I don't think there's a correlation between square footage and quality. It doesn't have to be. Um, and so the municipality, what they're doing is they're making us, a lot of times it's 2,000 square feet is our minimum, as we're running into. Their zoning ordinance will say they have a 1,400 square footage minimum on their books. But what we do when we zone property is we end up with zoning conditions, and it's a list of conditions specific to that neighborhood where they restate the minimum square footage, the pitches of the roof, the materials we have to use on the outside of the house, the number of garages it has to have, the trees that we have to plant, what type of tree, where we have to plant it, how far the house has to be off the street, how far it has to be from the side setbacks. And what's really funny about that is the municipality will tell you they'll define this box. It can be 60 feet wide. The house has to be 30 feet off the street, has to be 10 feet from the sidelines, has to be 20 feet from the rear sideline. It has to be 2,000 square feet. It has to have a 2-car garage, has to have an 812 pitch roof, and then they complain that the houses all look alike. Well, the thing is, what they fail to realize is they
They
design
designed the house.
80% of what they see, and they're leaving us very little wiggle room to try to be very, very creative.
Right.
And we want to be creative. You have a group of people who are these developers and home builders. They like to create things, and they want to design special things. They understand that this is the first place that people will buy. It's the first place they'll put up a Christmas tree. It's the place they'll get their college acceptance. It's where their children will take their first steps. That's where they'll celebrate the best times in their life, and they'll mourn some of the saddest times in their life. A home is important, and it's important for people to have. And what frustrates us in the industry is when we look and we see that, granted, you may not think an 800 square foot home can be done well. We can do it well. And the market will dictate. If we build them and they don't sell, well, then that's on me. But you're talking about the finest people in your community, the people you want as neighbors. This is what they can afford. Now, right now, Lance, they're living somewhere. Where are those people living?
Oh, they drive further out. I did a loan for a police officer. It's funny you bring this up. He was buying in Birmingham, but he was an Atlanta police officer. Literally, he was driving 2 hours one way to work every day. We had to get an explanation letter about why, and he explained, oh, the drive is actually good for my mental health. It kind of gets my mind off what happens at work. He said, but Lance, the truth is I can afford Birmingham.
Yeah.
And this was a few years ago, actually. So they just move further away until, like you said, they can afford what they can afford.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot. In fact, think about Midtown Atlanta. There's no way the average police officer or teacher owns a home in Midtown Atlanta. Very unlikely, right? The average price and
Right.
monthly payment, they have to drive outside the city to have any chance to live near work.
What's occurring to me as you're talking is, in practice, I'm always in front of city councils and county commissions zoning property, and I can't even, the minimum square footage they're asking for in some cases is twice what the police officers and firemen can afford.
Right.
It's 3 times what the teacher can afford. And I don't think that was the intent of these lawmakers when they did that. There's no way they would want to close the door on their own teachers being able to live in the communities that they serve. I mean, it's a healthy atmosphere when you can go to church, and in that church, your community, you see your firemen, your police officers, your teachers. That's what community is.
That's right.
Community isn't that they have to drive 2 hours away so they can come serve you during your working hours, and then they have to get out of town to have a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So what we believe when we're looking at this, and Lance helped me with another discussion we had about cost.
Mm-hmm.
So where the municipalities could help us is 2 things. One, they could be open-minded about square footages in housing. and some of the required density, because it would take 6 units per acre, 6 homes per acre, to be able to do something nice, and that would be detached, a yard. You could fence your yard, have your dog, all that. So the municipality doesn't necessarily want townhomes. We can give them what they want, but we just need some flexibility on the square footages. Now, LaGrange has a cottage concept that we're about to work in. LaGrange is an hour and a half south of Atlanta,
Right.
and so we're hoping it'll be successful. We think it will be. At the same time, it shouldn't be limited to any one municipality. We should have a teacher who teaches in a metro area like Atlanta or Nashville or Miami or anywhere should be able to buy a home there. That should be a given. And what we don't want to do, we see in the news and we hear people sympathetic to the plight of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, these were very average working class families, and mom stayed at home, and there was a parental presence all the time. And so if we really want to support families, then we can by not forcing everybody in the house to work 8 to 10 hours a day and nobody be there to raise the kids. Additionally, we're seeing plummeting birth rates. People are waiting and waiting and waiting to have kids. And John and I had a conversation with a young man a couple of weeks ago that he's just waiting to get his finances in a row, just
Right.
waiting till he they can own the home, they can save enough money. And that's great, but we need you young guys to be having a lot of kids. And if we can encourage you through home ownership and home accessibility, we think that would help. Now, John, you have a lot of young friends who are just starting their families. And do you ever hear frustration over the ability to buy a home or what they're waiting on as far as starting their family?
Yeah, I think everything I hear from people who haven't started their family is that they just want to get their finances in order. Luckily for me and a lot of my friends, we were buying, we just in happenstance got lucky and we're buying our homes 3 years ago. We just, that was the age we were. A lot of my 75% of my friends were lucky enough to get on the boat where we were buying houses. And I mean, it was a good time to buy a house. No one quite knew how good of a time.
Right.
But luckily, a lot of the group that I hang out with all got in the door at that time. But as far as people who don't have families, haven't had children yet, yeah, they're definitely waiting on getting able to live somewhere that they can raise a family and afford it. And that's often what we're hearing.
Lance, do you see young people changing spending habits as far as you would see that in credit card debt and car loans and
Oh, yeah.
things that are they starting to pare some of that back, or is that still a huge issue with them qualifying?
So what we've seen new is, have you ever heard of a firm like a finance now online kind of thing where you can buy an item from a website, but you click a button to finance it, and it's like you pay as you go. They pay like a weekly payment. That's become huge, right? We're seeing
Financing, like all kinds of
all
things.
kinds of stuff you buy on Amazon.
Yeah, it's often it's something that'll be like, click here for
That's right.
$100 payments, and I'm like,
Yep.
no, if I can't buy it now,
That's
shouldn't buy it.
we're seeing that a lot.
Yeah.
Where kids are what's funny is it doesn't report on credit, so we don't see it when we're initially qualifying them for a home. We have to actually pull their bank statements and see these payments going out of their bank statements.
Yeah.
We've had people actually qualify for the home up until 2 weeks before closing. We'll get a bank statement like, whoa, you're paying 4 different payments on personal items that you bought over the last 6 months. You've been making minimum payments on these things. So yeah, no, we've seen people are moving from credit cards over to things like firm, like buy now, pay now
Mhm.
kind of a thing. And they're starting to mess with their qualifications because the mortgage companies have gotten smart about it. Because at first we were like, oh, that's just something they bought online. And then when you realize, no, this is a financing offer that they've been extended, and they're making monthly payments on household goods, right? Now we're starting to see that that's impacting people's qualification, and literally we've had some people had to go buy a cheaper home because of it, or you got to pay that thing off, right? Like whatever that $100 a month thing for that, and 50 for that, and 25 for that, you got to pay it off before you can close on the new house.
That's interesting because I'd never heard of that. And so there's a level of kind of financial illiteracy that that a lot of us have. And so I don't think a person really understands the ramifications of that when they click that button.
That's right.
That's interesting. Well, guys, thank you for being here. Your front line, is there anything else that we should discuss when it talks about this? We're talking today about what the municipality could do. We think they could be more open-minded on square footage and zonings and architectural requirements. But is there anything we should be aware of that young people are facing or anything before we go?
Nothing like that per se. I think from a home pricing the home standpoint, the number one driver has always been lot costs. So when we're looking to buy a lot, we used to say that the lot should be 20% of your sales price. So if you want to buy a lot for $100,000, you should be able to build a house that you can sell for $500,000.
Right.
That's kind of always been the driver. Unfortunately, we're pushing that number over the last couple of years to 25. We've even gotten into some situations where we're paying 30% for the lot.
Right.
So that's kind of what's driven our company to be like, well, where can we get land to where we can still kind of follow that? Because once you get to that 30% number for your land being your sales price, it makes our business really tough. Like there's no margins, there's no money to be given. That's the sales price, and I hope you can afford it on your own. So, and what that's being the whole point of this is what can we do to get the lot price down, because it's gotten outrageous, and
Right.
that's the number one driver, because that's $100,000 for the land, and you're trying to sell $500,000 house. That's obviously where the most savings can happen, is in that lot
In that
price.
lot price.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see that. You know, when I talked to her earlier, when we were doing this, we did in passing, talked about that 25% gross margin. And anyone who's watching this or listening to it should understand that that 25% is not profit.
Sure.
That 25% is gross margin. So out of that 25%, John, you pay overhead, which year in, year out for us always run 11%.
Well, let's not even count the overhead. You right out the gate, if you're doing 25%, used to the lenders wanted to see 30% margin on your sales price too. So it's not even a number that we're like trying to hit out of greed. It's something that to get your next loan, you better be making money on your houses. So lenders wanted to see 30%. They've kind of worked with us to where they're like, okay, no one's doing the margins that they used to. So we've gotten that down to 25, 20 in some cases. And then cost of sale alone is going to run you about 9%. That's going to be 6% for commissions. That's pretty cut and dry across every deal. And then an additional 3%, I would say, from closing cost and incentives that you give. So even before your overhead, you're at 9 per sale. So
25 minus 9, you're at 16.
mhm,
And then
you got a
my
business to run.
experience was 11% overhead.
Yeah.
So that's 11% overhead. So you're looking for a profit of 5%.
hmm
And so with that 5%, what you've got to do is stay in business.
hmm
You've got to invest in
You're buying
in
next
land.
Buy more land.
You got to buy subdivisions, and you have to do that so that you can keep your people employed.
hmm
So if you don't take that 5% and reinvest it, and 5% is really a pretty low margin for a very, very risky business.
hmm
So you've got that 5% and you're reinvesting it. Now, is 5%, John, your degree was actuarial science. So I know you're a big time math guy, and Lance is a recovering engineer student. He's a math guy. So, but I want to ask you a question. So the police officer can earn $230,000. I mean, can pay $230 for a house, and the nurse can pay $275. So 5% of $230 is $11,500. I'm not bad at math either. And then 5% of 275 is $1375. Right?
Yeah, about 13 grand. Yeah.
$13,750. So, but what is 5% of 500,000? That's $25,000, right?
hmm
So, John, would you wouldn't you rather have 5% of $500,000, which is $25,000, than 5% of $230,000?
That's right.
I mean, you'd rather have $25,000 more than 11,500, right?
Yeah.
When we were going into two things, when we went into business, it was pretty easy. We counted the number of cashiers at the grocery store and the number of store managers, and we tried to build houses that cashiers could afford because there's more of them. We sell more of them. And then same thing with the nurses. There's more nurses in the hospital than there are orthopedic surgeons. So we would sell houses that the nurses could afford. And that's how we built our business. But that is an interesting decision you have to make. The thing, though, is there is oversupply in some areas
That's
of
right.
housing, and I think it all falls within that price
That's
point.
right. That's absolutely right. There's
So
an undersupply of the cheaper priced homes for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely for sure.
yeah. And honestly, should the government limit the options we have on where we live and how we live?
Right.
And that's more of a philosophical discussion that we'll have to dig into at another time. But guys, this was really helpful for me. I learned a couple things there, and John, you're doing it, and I know your business model, and what you've done is successfully gone into exurbs and built nice ranch style homes, and you can do it because, to your point, you got your land right. You do a really great job negotiating your land prices. So guys, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate you being on Build Baby Build, and we're going to look for you guys to be permanent partners as we explore more ways we can make homes more affordable.
Nice.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jay.